Welcome back to yet another episode of Health is Wealth. And for the message today, just wanted to speak on something that's been on my mind here recently. Something I just kind of went through an experience this last week, and it's something I've talked about before. And it's that we need to set the standard and be the standard. And what does that mean? Set the standard, be the standard. Well, it means living with expectations, right? Setting the bar, living by a code of who we are, what we represent, what kind of example are we setting, not just for ourselves, but others around us. And what I think about when I think about this and standards is just really accountability, right? Expecting more out of ourselves, holding ourselves to a higher level of expectation of being a better person, generally, is what this means. Because I think about a time in my life, when I probably didn't have standards. And not having standards means you don't essentially have a code that you're living by. And so everything's a free for all, like you're not holding yourself to a higher means of morale, of integrity, of character, of things in your life. And so typically I feel that, those of people whose lives are out of control or not going the best, it's most likely because we're missing the main part of it, and it's just standards. And so, again, I just think a lot about this here recently as I'm getting into different things in my life, right? Training in several different types of martial arts and, training with my gym and trying to become healthier physically, mentally, internally, emotionally, nutritionally, and everything. And all of that is myself holding me to a standard, raising the bar for myself, stretching myself out. That way, I have an accountability for myself to live up to an expectation now that I'm doing my best to hold, right? And so it all starts there. We have to create that standard and decide what that standard means, And I think most time when people have a standard that they live by, it's a means of getting them again to elevate themselves in life, right? By holding yourself to a higher standard of living, things you do or don't do, the way you do or don't speak or think or act or dress or whatever it may be, it might be a whole bunch of different kind of little guidelines. And again, more of a code, a standard could just be, an example that we're setting for ourselves and others, and just how important it is, right? Because I think when we can set a standard and be the standard, it could be an opportunity to set an example for other people. One of the experiences I had myself this last week, because I've been holding myself to some higher standards of non-negotiables of things that I am doing and not doing and staying away from, and things that I have to do as a part of my day to day. Myself holding myself to that standard, I felt helped someone, here this past week, perhaps look at themselves and maybe begin to elevate their standards of things that they're not going to do or do with nutrition, with their health, with fitness, and things like that. And I only felt that was able to come about because I helped my standard. But it really started with I created a standard and I'm creating one every day. And what's really helped me do so, I've talked about before, is putting myself in environments that require me to look at how I uphold myself, right? The things that I expect of myself, the things that I'm doing to try to elevate again different aspects of my life, and being around people who challenge me to be better, right? A better person, a better man, a better human being, all in general. And so on, it's allowed me to again look at myself and just, ask myself, what things am I doing or not doing in my life that do or don't serve me? What things am I doing or not doing in my life that are setting a good example? What am I doing or not doing in my life that's either making me better or making me worse? And that all comes with, again, a standard, right? And why it's important. And so, you know, set the standard and be the standard really just means walking, again, with a code in life, having something, that you say, okay, this is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. This is how I'm going to carry myself in life. This is what I expect of myself in life. And I think when we hold true to that and we create that and we stand to it, it just has the power to help not just yourself because, you begin to maybe see a side of yourself that you haven't. You start to stretch yourself further. You start to dig in deeper places that maybe you didn't realize were there. And because as you hold yourself to higher standards, again, it's really just you expect more from yourself because you deserve more, right? You decide you're not going to settle anything less than these standards because you are worth it and you are better than that. And that's what it all comes down to. And so, but we've got to create that standard first, right? We got to figure out what does that mean to us, what kind of standards do we want in our lives? And, how are we going to do our best to hold ourselves to be that standard, And I think the more we can define what that is, and again, more the opportunities that we put ourselves in situations and environments and that around people who challenge us to raise our standards, then the better we can elevate ourselves, in that area. And I don't think there can be anything but positives to that because when we decide to have those standards and hold them and create them and elevate them, we're only unlocking that next, greater version of ourselves to be a better human being altogether, externally and internally, right? So that's the thing I've been thinking about a lot this week, right? Is just set the standard and be the standard and living by a code that challenges you to always expect more out of yourself, always challenges you to, to work harder, to be more accountable for the things you do, your actions, and everything, that sums up who you are as a person. And why I think most people really don't sometimes is because it is work, right? It is hard. Because once you start setting standards, it's now work. It's easy not to have a standard, If you don't have standards, you're doing whatever, whenever, however, and who cares, right? But the moment you start to set standards and you start to elevate yourself, you begin to stick out a little bit more sometimes, right? You begin to get questioned a little bit more. There's a lot of different things that probably come around just the nature of it in general because again now there's accountability. Now you've got to hold the standard, right? Now it's work. If your standard is I do this and I don't do that, there is constant situations where you're going to be put in to test you in those standards. It's a lot of saying no to this, a lot of saying yes to these things. It's a lot of doing things when you don't want to. It's a lot about just reflecting on again, just how you think, how you talk, how you treat people, how you act out in public, how you conduct yourself, the things that you believe in, the things you just stay away from, whatever it may be. Now there's a whole slew of things that go into it, which why it makes it a little bit harder, I think, to create a standard because, most of it is self-reflecting and accountability and asking ourselves, is this who we want to be? Is this who we want people to see us as? Is this what we want to represent, And it might look different for a lot of different people, right? But like I said, the easier of the two is to have no standards. But I think once we can create a standard and be the standard, not only are we going to elevate ourselves, but we just have so much power to help elevate other people because when they can see you walking around creating the standard and being the standard, now you've got an example to set for other people, because I always say, like, I always believe that people are watching us, right? Regardless if you think so or not. Somebody's looking at you to try to navigate this world as an example of what to do or what not to do or how to be or what not to be or what to say or what not to say. Somebody's always doing so, whether you think so or not, regardless of how close, how far, they are, how small or whatever it is, they might be in your world. I always think that someone's looking at you, and so that's why I think it's important for us to set the standard and be the standard and to be a good example. That way we always have it. So if anybody's watching us at any given time, we're trying to lead people in a better path in life, right? To be better human beings, on a pathway that challenges them to bring out the best out of them, right? Like, I hope nobody out here is trying to get people to, to go the opposite direction. And there's enough of that out there, right? There's enough of examples out there in this world and standards of things to not do or be. And we could always need and use more people who are creating a standard and being a standard that's going to uphold and create values and morals and integrity and honesty and just, being a person of just good integrity, who's got good intentions, who wants to do good for people, who wants to see the best in people, who wants to see the best in themselves, who wants to, to build, and not destroy, who wants to create an impact, and all these different things that, again, coming with creating a standard and being a standard is going just to help you in your world and everybody else around you. So, remember that message here as you go into this next week, right? Create the standard, set the standard and be the standard, because it's going to bring the best out of you. And at any given time, you can always be in the position where you're going to help empower somebody else if you become that standard and you hold to it very strong. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.